Jovan, Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, NBA reporter for Buha's Block, and welcome to another live show. Just got back from Crypto.com Arena, where the Lakers beat the New York Knicks 110-97 in a statement win. Arguably the Lakers' best win of the season. In my opinion, their best win of the season. I'm going to lay out the case. Shout out to the chat. Shout out to the late night gang. Today, early evening gang, we will say it's about 6 p.m. Pacific time right now. But LA improves to 39-25, and they actually jump the Denver Nuggets, who they're tied with in the standings. But due to being the Pacific Division leader right now, they are 1-1 in the season series, which makes next weekend's game against Denver huge. But because they're tied in the head-to-head matchup, it goes to the division matchup in terms of, is either team a division leader? The Lakers are their division leader in the Pacific Division, so they actually jump Denver right now and are the 5 seed, would be playing Minnesota, who's currently number 4, in a 4-5 battle, and then winner of that would go on to get the treat of playing OKC in round 2. More importantly, in my opinion, Lakers now are 5-12 against teams with a 600 or better win percentage, which is something I've been harping on all season. The Lakers have just not beaten the elite teams this season. They have not fared well against them. They have not fared well against them relative to the teams in their standings area, right? Like if you compare them to just the top of the West, the top of the East, those teams have played better against 500 teams and also against 600 teams. And the fact that the Lakers have now strung together, this win plus competitive losses against OKC and Denver, I think they are trending in the right direction against this caliber of competition. They're going to get a lot more opportunities with Minnesota on Tuesday and then Denver next weekend, and a couple more OKC matchups, a couple more Houston matchups, Detroit, Cleveland. Like they're going to get some more opportunities here to play this caliber of opponent. But I think, especially with the Boston loss not that far in the rear view, it's been nice to see LA they outscore Denver for 43 of the 48 minutes, but that's not how basketball works. You have to actually win the game, and they just had a disastrous start to that game. But then tonight, win wire to wire, they led the entire game, and just a really impressive performance. To me, their best win of the season. Really the only game I think you could compare to this one would be their first win of the season, which was the second game of the season against Minnesota. They beat a full strength Minnesota team without LeBron. Speaking of that, they are now 9-2 this season with Luka and Austin in the lineup without LeBron. That's going to be a big talking point coming out of this one. It's already been a big talking point coming out of this one on social media. I assume all the debate shows, all the big podcasts tomorrow are going to be talking about, are the Lakers better than without LeBron, and should they bench LeBron? And we'll get into all that. I already am I'm dreading what the conversation and the narratives are going to be coming out of this one, but I will touch on some of the numbers within some of that and get into some of the nuances with all of that. But again, shout out to the chat. Appreciate you all. And let's get into it. So Buha's big picture is LA delivered a statement in the best win of the season. And for me, this was the best win of the season because I have all year been judging the Lakers through the lens of, are they a contender? How far can they go in the playoffs? And if you like, there's different ways you can judge this team. If you judge them through a more optimistic lens, you could look at like all the injuries they've had and maybe some of the things they've built on throughout the season and even built on compared to last season. But it just depends how you want to look at things. For me, it's been like, you have Luka Doncic entering his prime. You have LeBron James at the tail end of his career, still playing at an all-star level. You have an ascending player in Austin Reeves, who for the first 2 months of the season was playing at an all-star level. You should be judged at a pretty high level here, and you should be held to a certain standard where you are being compared to the OKCs and Denvers and San Antonios and Houstons, Minnesotas, etc. So I've been trying to judge them and analyze them through that lens all season. And as we've discussed on here, they have often fallen short in those comparisons, whether you look at the point differential, the net rating, you look at the record against 500 teams, record against 600 teams, they just have often fallen short. But I've been saying coming out of the All-Star break, I said I wanted the Lakers to get healthy. I wanted them to figure out the best way to fit the big three together, which is an ongoing process. And I wanted some statement wins. They have largely gotten healthy, with the exception now of LeBron missing some time with they've still had guys in and out of the lineup, but they've largely been healthy, where it's like maybe a rotation guy, maybe a couple rotation guys. But for the most part, they've been relatively healthy coming out of the break. The big three have been a +7 together in terms of net rating coming out of post All-Star break. So that has been working better than it was pre All-Star break. For the season, they're a -1 in terms of net rating, points per 100 possessions. So it's better than what it was before the All-Star break, or leading right into the All-Star break. They were almost a -10. So there's been some real progress here over the last couple of weeks, but they had not yet delivered a statement win. And they had an opportunity against Boston. Depending on how you feel about Phoenix, they had another opportunity with that one. They had another opportunity with Denver, and they lost all those games, and a couple of them in heartbreaking fashion, one of them in embarrassing fashion against Boston. And this was the latest test for the Lakers. And despite being shorthanded with LeBron being out, they led this game wire to wire, and they got it was almost the inverse of the Denver game, where they were the team that came out ready for the moment. And doing so, I mean, for those of you on the West Coast and particularly like LA, but I guess it doesn't, in the Pacific time zone, we'll say, the daylight savings, it's been kicking my ass. I'm not a morning person, as you guys know. That's partly why we are the late night gang. But the switch from 2 a.m. jumping to 3 a.m., you lost an hour of sleep, and then you also had an early game. So for LA, it was a 12:30 game, but really it was an 11:30 game based on the body clock. And several people spoke to this after the game, JJ and several players, just how tired everyone was and kind of how out of whack it was to be playing a game that early. They practiced that early, but it's different practicing versus playing a game. So they had some built-in excuses of, it's an early game. Knicks are more on their time, where they're used to the East Coast body clock, whatever. Even though they're on a road trip, no LeBron. There were some built-in excuses that if you really wanted to reach for them, you could have. But the Lakers came out. They had a great start to the game. I thought DeAndre Ayton was awesome in that first shift, one of his best recent shifts of basketball. And they just were the hungrier team. They were the more physical team. They set the tone tonight or today. Again, the time's throwing me off. But how many? Austin said this after the game. Austin said that the Lakers were hungrier and more physical and tougher than New York tonight. How many times have we been able to say that about the Lakers against good teams? It's often been the opposite, where the other team is hungrier and tougher and more physical and just physically overwhelms the Lakers. And tonight, despite the Knicks are not the most physical team. They are physical. They're not the most athletic team. Let me be clear on that. They're not the most athletic team. They're not Houston. There's no Amen Thompson on this team. They're not San Antonio. There's no Stephon Castle. There's no, it's not OKC. It's not Minnesota with Ant and Jaden McDaniels. They have size and they are physical and they have tough play. Mitchell Robinson, Josh Hart, OG Anunoby. These guys are, even Jalen Brunson, obviously has got the size limitations, but he's a tough, hard-nosed player. So Jose Alvarado, et cetera. They've got some tough, nasty players on their team, But I think that the athleticism, like they weren't able to overwhelm LA in that way, which I think kind of played into LA's advantage. But really, the Lakers were the ones who dictated the terms of engagement and were the far more physical team tonight. And not only was this one of their, again, I'll say best one of the season, I thought it was one of their best defensive performances of the season. I mean, if you wanted to argue this was their best defensive performance of the season, I wouldn't necessarily disagree. They did benefit, like I try to call it like I see it. So there was certainly some element of like New York short arming some point blank layups, New York missing some open threes. There was a New York definitely from like a variance perspective was not scoring or as efficient as they could have been based on like shot quality. But you could also argue the same thing for the Lakers. Like down the stretch of that fourth quarter, how many times were they finding Rui or Luke Kennard or whoever for a good look? Jackson going downhill and getting stripped. A couple of those could have easily been fouls. So the Lakers offense did stall, and I did not love the process down the stretch of the game offensively, but they also missed some quality looks where, I mean, you could play that game on the Knicks side, but I think you could also play that game on the Lakers side. They didn't shoot that much better than them. If you look at the final box score here, Lakers shot 43.2%, Knicks shot 42.7%. So you had a 0.5 difference there. The big difference was in the free throw battle where LA was +9 in terms of attempts and +6 in makes. And then also the 3-point battle, LA was +10 in attempts and +7 in makes. Knicks only shot 24% on threes. LA shot 34%. So that's where this game was partly swung. But I just huge win for LA. Like again, there's certain things we could nitpick. There's certain things we can overanalyze or critique. But I've been asking. You guys know, those who listen to me regularly, you know I've been on this like all season of really just judging the Lakers against the best teams, and this was just a great win. Like there's no other way around it. There's no other way to frame it, in my opinion. This was a great win. Now, I think the key moving forward for the Lakers is twofold. We're going to get into some of the breakdown with the big three and how they fared with the big three versus how they fared with two of the three. But first and foremost, I think they have to use this as momentum into next week with the Minnesota and Denver matchups. Like if LA comes out on Tuesday and gets their ass kicked by Minnesota and then loses to Denver, regardless of the context of that game, it's like, okay, it was nice that you beat the Knicks and that was a nice win, best win of the season. But like, did you build off of that? Like what did it mean? And there's also the element of like, I think the West, big matchups are going to carry a little bit more weight just because the Lakers are only facing the Knicks if they play them in the finals. They might face Denver or Minnesota in round one. It might be a first round preview. So like those games are going to mean just like a little bit more. So can they build off of this? Can they go out and beat Minnesota, go to 3-0 against them on the season? Or can they go out and beat Denver next weekend, win the season series? And it doesn't even matter that they're the division leader. Like I want to see them build off of this, right? And then the second part of it is like, can they do this with the big three? Because this has been, I'll say the elephant in the room has just been the Lakers have, certainly from an eye test perspective, but depending on the combination and depending on what numbers you look at, like they've also just been better with two of the three players, two of the big three. And so can they, if LeBron returns on Tuesday and they lose, there's going to be the whole narrative of they're worse with LeBron, this is LeBron's fault, etc. But I don't believe that. I just think they still have not yet fully figured out how to be their best self with the big three. And I think even if you look at the individual plus minus, shout out to Law Murray at The Athletic, who's been posting the breakdowns for each individual game with the big three. They've only had a double-digit plus minus in a positive sense twice all season. And it was recently, it was against Phoenix. That was the recent game they just lost. And then it was against Golden State. Otherwise, it's been negative or it's been a single digit plus minus. I would like to see that increase down the stretch here, and also them fare better against some of the better teams with the big three on the floor. Now, can they do that? I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball here in terms of how that situation is going to continue to unfold. Going back to last season, they had a -1 net rating with the big three coming out of the playoffs. This season, they have a -1 net rating with the big three. So they're sort of just treading water, basically, with the big three as we have a larger sample size with those three. But I would like to see LA continue to build off of this, and this not just be a situation where 2 weeks from now we're looking back and being like, oh yeah, remember that one-off like great win against the Knicks? That was like the peak of the season. I want to see this continue, but then I also want to see how can they, because there's a lot of nuances within this of like, how like Rui fits off the ball versus how LeBron fits off the ball. Like Rui is a much more natural off ball player. He's a catch and shoot spot up guy. He can do more than that, but like, especially with the starters, like that's Rui's role, and he's an elite shooter. So he fits great into that role. But like, so we could go into like some of the role stuff, but I also just think there was an element of like, LA playing with a certain energy and a certain effort level. The key that JJ talked about after the game was multiple efforts. He said he goes into every game with 3 offensive keys and 3 defensive keys. He said tonight the only key really on both ends, but specifically defensively, was multiple efforts. And he thought that was something that really was a differentiating factor for LA. So while people are going to look at the record without LeBron, and it's going to start to get into a whole conversation about should they bench him or are they better without him or this or that, whatever. I think the reality of the situation is the big three are going to continue to start. I do not see them moving Austin to the bench. I do not see them moving LeBron to the bench. And so they're going to have to figure this out. And there's been some progress, to be sure, but it's still like a relatively small sample size on the season. And that's been partly carried by some performances against, Phoenix that they lost in spite of how well the big three played. But like Golden State, Sacramento, New Orleans, like they've been beaten up on some bad teams with the big three. Now we're going to see what this looks like against a Minnesota, a Denver, Houston, etc. But to be clear, like best win of the season, a statement win. This is something I've been looking for from the Lakers, and it was a gritty win. It was an ugly win. They had some, they got this one out the mud. This was not the, the prettiest offensive basketball from this group, but they found a way to win. Even when New York, like we've seen the Lakers have some good stretches against good teams, get punched in the face a couple of times and wilt and let go of the rope. They could have done that in the fourth quarter and had a catastrophe of a loss. Like if LA had lost this game based on how well they had played through the first like 3.5 quarters, it obviously would have been a disaster, but they found a way to get enough stops. Austin with some strips on Jalen Brunson in transition, Luka with several clutch shots, Marcus Smart with a bunch of big plays. Like it was just guy after guy made really big swing plays that ultimately saved LA and preserved the lead. So again, best one of the season, no doubt about it, in my opinion. You want to put Minnesota up there, that's fair. But there was one Minnesota win without Ant, one Denver win without Jokic, one San Antonio win without Fox and Harper before San Antonio really popped as the team they've been now for almost 4 months. Those wins were all nice, even within the context of like those teams missing certain guys. Like the Lakers obviously were missing a bunch of guys against Minnesota. The Denver game, that was just Luka and LeBron. San Antonio outside, like Lakers didn't have Austin and LeBron, so it was pretty much Luka carrying the load in that game. Like there are several of these wins that are nice, but for me, I carry more, like what carries more weight is Lakers beating other teams at full strength. Even if the Lakers aren't at full strength, I want to see them beat good teams when they're at full strength. So there's no excuses. No, like you could say this or that. They have not really done that, but they did it today. And to me, this will hopefully be a launch pad forward to some more sustained excellence and success from the Lakers the rest of the season. In terms of notable performers, we have to start with Luka Doncic. 35 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals. 11 to 25 shooting, 5 for 16 on threes, 8 for 10 at the free throw line. I thought Luka set a great tone in that first quarter. And he also just made so many big shots down the stretch. I mean, that shot, one of the most demoralizing shots of the season, where you have OG Anunoby, who's like at least an all defense second team candidate. And he's draped he was guarding Luka all night. You have one of the best individual perimeter defenders guarding him all night, but he's draped on Luka. And this has almost become, at least as a Laker, like obviously I was watching Luka. I was not watching every game or every possession with him in Dallas. But when I think about Luka as a Laker, one of his patented shots is that left wing falling out of bounds, just ridiculous shot that he ends up hitting over OG Anunoby and then falls into the crowd. But like he took a charge tonight, thought made got a couple steals there in the fourth quarter, just made some big defensive plays. Did not have the most efficient night. I know there will be some who harp on that. 25 shots is on the high side, as we've discussed a little bit earlier in the week, but he got it going from three. Again, 16 threes, went just 5 for 16. If you really want to nitpick that, also had the 6 turnovers. Like I know there's going to be the people who are going at him for that, but I just thought he made, in a game that like at times had a playoff like atmosphere, he made just some huge shots in this game, and iced the game with that final 3 when it was like 10 points with a minute left, but also had the baseline shot. Just some ridiculous shot made. Like, it felt like every shot that Luka made tonight, like he missed some of the easier ones, and then he just made. That's just what he does. And then inside the arc was incredibly efficient, 6 for 9 on 2-pointers. Got to the free throw line 10 times, 8 for 10 there. Also was tied for team high in rebounds with his 8 rebounds. So again, if you want to nitpick the efficiency, could he have maybe taken a couple fewer shots, and particularly threes? The turnovers at times, like he had a couple where he just lost the ball that, I think like December, he had kind of gone through a stretch there where it was a little bit higher turnover, but I think he's been much better with the turnovers lately. And second on the team in plus minus tonight. LA was plus 14 in his 38 minutes. And again, I thought overall he was the best player on the floor. Then we have to go to Austin Reeves, because Austin Reeves, if you want to quibble with that statement I just said of Luka being the best player on the floor, I think the only other guy, Brunson had a good game, although he was inefficient as well. But like Austin Reeves was awesome tonight. 25 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists. Just his third 20-point game since returning from injury. This to me was maybe his best game since returning from injury. I think the only game in competition is that Philly game, but definitely his best offensive performance since that Philly game, which was his second game back and was the day of the trade deadline. So that was literally a month ago. But 8 for 16 shooting, 3 for 6 on threes, 6 for 7 at the free throw line. Had 3 steals and a block, so 4 stocks for Austin, including a couple of huge strips on Jalen Brunson in transition, as the Knicks, like the Lakers were taking some difficult shots, some turnovers. Knicks get out in transition, and twice Austin stripped Jalen Brunson, and there was some contact there, but like they didn't call it. And it ultimately was like 2 huge stops that I think either one of those, if it's a foul or Brunson makes it, I think that the momentum shift there was huge. So it was nice to see Austin break out in a real way. And certainly his usage is going to be up when LeBron is out, and you look at that 16 shot attempt number plus the 7 free throws. Like the usage is definitely going to be in like the top 3 of post return games. But I just thought what really got him going, like the Lakers ran some, like some of his best offense recently has been these off ball actions where he's coming off of these wide pin downs, curling into the lane, and then just depending on how the team is defending it, especially if they're in drop, he's just walking into these little 6 to 12 footers, and he hit several of those tonight. But then he also had some nice plays, just dropping his shoulder into guys, getting to the rim, finishing. Had a couple of off the dribble threes, which we haven't seen as much from him lately. So I thought Austin, I mean, again, arguably his best game since returning from injury, and certainly a game that the Lakers should try to bottle up and then continue to conjure moving forward, just because I mean, if they have this version of Austin plus Luka plus LeBron returns and plays, to his recent play, like I just think I don't know what you do with those three guys, at least on the offensive end. Then Marcus Smart, we're going to touch on him with one of the takeaways, but I think I'll say this: probably the best 1 for 10 game any player has had this season. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say no one in the NBA has had as impactful of a 1 for 10 performance as Marcus Smart did tonight. Lakers were a team best plus 27 in his 29 minutes. For some perspective on that, I mentioned Luka had the second best plus minus at plus 14. Marcus was nearly double that. So that just shows, like, regardless of the line, and he played with Luke. He played with both Luka and Austin. He played with Luka by himself. He played with Austin by himself. And all those lineups won tonight. Marcus was, again, the shot selection is always something that you can fine tune with Marcus. But yeah, we'll touch on him in one of the takeaways. And then Rui Hachimura, I thought Rui was awesome today. 13.7 rebounds. Set an early tone with his shooting. Went a little cold there in the fourth and missed some good looks, but he was switching across multiple positions, had some nice possessions against some of their guards, and again was guarding a spectrum of players in terms of like post defense against Karl Anthony Towns, switching on to Jalen Brunson. Like this combined with the Denver game, I've really liked Rui's recent play. I really like the rebounding, like 7 rebounds. Rui does not have a lot of games like that. There was some possessions where he was boxing out Mitchell Robinson, and that's one of the best offensive rebounders in the league. I thought Rui did a nice job. Then DeAndre Ayton. So DeAndre Ayton missed the last couple of games, or I guess exited the Denver game, missed most of it, then missed the last game. And 6 points, 8 rebounds. I thought, I said it earlier in the show, but that first shift that he had was one of his best recent shifts. He had a block, had another, I think Rui technically got the block, but it was almost like a double block. Like DeAndre was right. Like if Rui had not blocked it, I think DeAndre would have blocked it. Had an offensive rebound that led to a cutout, a kick out, he kicked it out to Luka. Luka drove and then fired it to Austin in the left corner. Austin cashed in the open corner 3. I just think like DeAndre set a bunch of screens, had a couple of lobs, had another opportunity he missed, but then got the offensive rebound, put it back in, just like did his job tonight. And I think that applies up and down the roster for the most part. Pretty much everybody just like did exactly what you want from them. But DeAndre, has been facing a lot of scrutiny, a lot of criticism. As Marcus Smart said after the Denver game, he's heard all of it and he wants to be better. As JJ said pregame today, that they have they're aware that they want to involve him offensively, like get him going early, and then hopefully see the best version of him, the most consistent version of him. And JJ said he's optimistic that they'll see that. I thought it was interesting that he only played 20 minutes today, despite I thought it was a great first shift. I thought the next 2 shifts were solid, I would say. Definitely not as impactful as the first shift. But even with him, I would say playing better, it seems like there's still a cap. And maybe part of this is just dealing with the knee soreness. The Lakers are going to manage it, reduce his minutes a bit. But we had seen more recently when he had played better, JJ had lengthened the leash a bit and extended his minutes. Tonight, that was not the case. They went with the 3 center rotation, and Jackson ended up closing. Then off the bench, Luke Kennard hit 3 threes. That was huge. 12 points. JJ with the offense stalling went back to Luke Kennard, and he helped with both his spacing and gravity, but then also ultimately hitting a 3, which the Lakers desperately needed. But he continues to just be I mean, interestingly, had the third lowest plus minus of the 10 guys who played. But I think part of that was the two guys who had the lowest plus minus also shared the floor a lot with Luke. And JJ went to this lineup I did not love to start the second and fourth quarter, which was Maxey, Vando, Jake, Luke, and Austin. I know the options were relatively limited with no LeBron, but it's basically three guys who can't, or at least with the more recent version of Jake, cannot score and are not really like spacing or shooting threats. And then it's putting everything on Austin and Luke to like run the offense. So those groups didn't really do well. Like the second quarter shift, they immediately gave up a run and JJ brought back in Marcus and Rui. The fourth quarter shift just was kind of meh. So like I would like that lineup to maybe be retired after this. But yeah, I mean, I think that kind of artificially decreased Luke's plus minus, but Luke continues to just be Luke and let it fly more tonight. 8 shot attempts in 27 minutes, 7 threes, like 7 3-point attempts, 3 made threes, just good stuff from Luke. Jackson, I thought, had a really rough first shift. He got an offensive foul, which then led into a technical foul, and I thought it was kind of like regressing a little bit, but then his next 2 shifts were much better. He closed the game well. I thought, despite going 0 for 3, at least 1 or 2 of those could have easily been fouls on the New York strip. Like it kind of became both teams stripping each other, and the refs were like, we're not really calling this contact anymore. So Jackson, I think, got a little frustrated with that. I mean, did get to the free throw line 6 times, and that's where he scored his 5 points. But the rebounding, the switchability, the verticality defensively, I thought he did foul Brunson a couple times on the head fake, but like he also had some nice switching possessions out onto the perimeter. Jake, I thought, had a better game than he's had recently, with 6 points, 4 rebounds, a couple of offensive rebounds. I thought he was really good at like digging down and helping off of their non-shooters, or just being like a pass away and digging down on penetration and kind of guys in the middle of the floor. Vando had some a couple of nice shifts where he was pressuring the ball, basically took Jose Alvarado out of the game, but then also got some time against Brunson. And then Maxi Kleba, I think like some of his switching on the perimeter, like what I really liked within some of the more defensive minded lineups was the combo of Maxey, Vando, and Marcus. That group as like a core trio, I thought like the Knicks could not score against those 3 together. It was more so, I thought, when Jake was the other like defender, it just wasn't as effective. But Maxey, I thought, gave them some like good switching minutes, but I don't know that they necessarily need to keep the 3 center rotation going, but maybe again, if DA's limited, or if he starts to show some of the bad habits he showed or has showed over the last couple of months, then that's a different conversation. But yeah, I mean, so that was the 10-man rotation tonight. Stat of the night for me, I'm keeping this one very simple. Lakers led 99% of the time. This was a wire-to-wire win. Even some of these wins that they've had against some of the better teams, they rarely, if ever, have. I mean, I don't think they definitely did not lead the Minnesota game in Minnesota wire to wire, if I'm not mistaken. That Denver game, they were down big. The San Antonio game was back and forth. And the first Minnesota game, I'm pretty sure that one was back and forth as well, until LA eventually broke it open. So like, this also is probably, I think, the first of the 5 that they led entirely wire to wire and just set a tone from the jump. And again, similar to the Denver game, but like in LA's favor, was that first few minutes. I think that like the Knicks were never able to fully get back into the game. Like they had a couple runs in the first half. It was only 5 at halftime, but even within, like, depending on how you looked at it, I was a little disappointed in the Lakers. I was like, it feels like LA has outplayed them by like 10 to 12 points. They're only up by 5. It could have gone the opposite way, where you saw like New York immediately cat dunk, DeAndre Ayton gets a dunk, Jalen Brunson 3. It's a 2-point game within like a minute to start the third quarter. But from that point on, LA just ran them off the floor, got it to 20. Then Knicks went on their run in the fourth. LA couldn't score. but LA ultimately prevailed. Then let's go through the 3 takeaways, and then we'll get into the Q&A. Takeaway number 1 is the elephant in the room. So I kind of touched on this during the big picture portion, so I don't want to belabor it, but I was just curious because I know people are going to be talking about the record without LeBron, and I think that's going to be a big talking point coming out of this one. Because even when the Lakers win, there's got to be something negative or controversial or polarizing to talk about. So quickly looking at, I just went through and looked at several iterations of combinations for the Lakers. So on the season, 11-7 with the big 3, which is a .611 win percentage, a 50 win pace. So in the 18 games the big 3 have played together, 51 pace. So just keep that number in mind. Luka and Austin, no LeBron, which is now, again, the topic of conversation. 9-2, which is a .818. Shout out to the 818. That's where I'm from. Win percentage, 67 win pace. So with just those 2, the Lakers have won at a 67 win pace. Do I think there's a lot of noise in that? Yes. Do I think the Lakers are a 67 win team with just Luka and Austin? No. But certainly have performed better. That's objective. That's undeniable. Or at least like within the small sample size. Then Luka and LeBron, no Austin, which is a stretch we've seen more recently, before Austin returned from injury. 12-8, which is a 600 win percentage and a 49 win pace. And then the 5 games the Lakers have played with Austin and LeBron and no Luka, they are 3-2, which is a 600 win percentage, 49 win pace. So to recap quickly, big 3 together, 51 pace. Luka and Austin, no LeBron, 67 win pace. Luka and LeBron, no Austin, 49 win pace. And then AR and LeBron, no Luka, 49 win pace. Now, a lot of noise in all of this. To like the premise of this entire stream today, like a lot of these wins have been against bad teams, like the Lakers or average teams. So not like a lot of statement or good wins within each of these breakdowns. So I think that is important context just to like the entire conversation of some of these, like the Lakers caught teams on the right night, or the Lakers were in a good groove, and they obviously went through the malaise during December, even into January. And I mean, they've basically still been a 500 team going on 3 months. So like there's a lot, I think, of nuance and context within this dynamic. But I think what is true, in my opinion, is the Lakers have looked better with 2 of the big 3 on the floor. If you want to break it down by combination, the best combination has easily been Luka and Austin. That's still, that's reflected in the record as well. So I think the Lakers are just in an interesting spot here because for multiple reasons, including political reasons, they're not bringing one of the big 3 off the bench. I think if you are going to entertain that possibility, and I know many fans have, there's people on the side of bring Austin off the bench. There's people on the side of bring LeBron off the bench. It's just not happening. It's just LeBron is LeBron. I've said that before. Like, there's no scenario in which Michael Jordan would ever come off the bench. There's no scenario in which Kobe Bryant would ever come off the bench. There's no scenario in which LeBron James will ever come off the bench. Like, he is in that stratosphere. He is of that status. He is of that ilk. It's just not happening. Like, it's just not happening. I don't know what to tell people. Then you have Austin, who the Lakers view as a centerpiece, who tonight showed, like, when he's empowered as the clear number 2 with a very distant number 3. If you want to debate like Rui or Marcus, Austin can play at an all-star level and be one of the best players on the floor in a big game. And remember, like, go back to some of these games early in the season, he was awesome in that. I mean, he was awesome in both Minnesota games. The one at home where Luka played in, the one in Minnesota where Luka didn't play. Then the Denver game he did not play in, and the San Antonio game he did not play in. So he's played in 3 of the 5 wins against the 600 club. But I mean, he's had like the Toronto game or Philly or whatever. Like he's had some big performances against some good teams, some solid teams, and especially when he's empowered in a certain role. So I think the thing the Lakers just have to figure out is like it continues to be this thing where if we accept the premise that they're better with two of the three rather than all three, but they're gonna start all three for a variety of reasons, and then on top of that, just based on the minutes when we get to the playoffs, they're gonna be playing. I feel like it's impossible. And even if you move one to the bench, let's just say you're still getting 15 to 20 minutes with all three on the floor. So like, yes, it might help with some of the starts, but you're still going to run into the speed bump of stretches, like multiple shifts, or at least a couple shifts every half where all three are on the floor together, and you have to do better than like tread water. So it feels like, yes, you can maybe put a Band-Aid on the situation, and let's just say you somehow convince one of like LeBron or Austin to come off the bench permanently. You're still going to have the 15 to 20 minutes that they're on the floor together, and you have to do better than the Lakers have done up to this point in their tenure, factoring in last season and this season. Because again, they've been a negative in both seasons, factoring in the playoffs. So it's just, I think there's going to be a lot of noise. There's going to be a lot of discourse with this. I reject the premise that they are better without LeBron. I think they are better with two of the three. And I think that Luka and Austin have been the best combination. So that's where it gets into maybe some semantics here, where I think people are trying to make, or some people, I want to be clear, I don't know. I'm not like, I'm not doing like an exit survey with the entire fan base or just the general NBA discourse, but like there is now the narrative building that like without LeBron, they're like some great team that he's holding them back. I just don't buy that, because I also think tonight, I think they could have used LeBron tonight. I think they could have used the passing. I think at times, especially when it was only one of Luka and Austin on the floor, they just were kind of limited with the passing. And it was like, if Austin or Luka wasn't the one creating something, there was just sort of a limitation there to the shot quality they were going to generate. I also think LeBron has played well against the Knicks over the last couple years in these matchups. And I think LeBron operating out of the post and playing some bully ball could have been a really effective weapon against the Knicks, and also like warped the geometry of the floor, because the Lakers had a very perimeter heavy attack. They were able to attack downhill, but they were still like relatively jump shot heavy tonight in a way that I think the best version of LeBron, judging him on this season, the best version of LeBron still could have been a very impactful player. Now, I think there would have had to have been a certain level of defensive engagement and a certain level in general with the group of like effort, motor, all that stuff. But I just think to me, this was less about, LeBron doesn't fit or they got to move LeBron to the bench or whatever, and more so like continued evidence that they are often at their best with two of the three. They need to continue to stagger them as much as possible, and potentially even like a more aggressive stagger of 3 to 4 minutes into the first quarter. They're pulling one of the big three. And I guess based on the substitution pattern, it would be LeBron, and like just really kind of staggering those minutes. But again, you're going to get 15 to 20 minutes with the three in some form or fashion, whether it's beginning of the first quarter or at some point in the second quarter, whatever. You're going to get those minutes. You're going to close games with them. I don't see that change. Like if it somehow changed with the starting group, I do not see it changing with the closing group. So the Lakers just have to be better with those three. But I think if they played with the same level of effort and physicality and focus and like tenacity that they played with tonight, moving forward, I think we will see better results with the big three. Then takeaway number 2, Hart starts with Smart, and I hope you don't mind the rhyming there, but Marcus Smart, Lakers, as I said, plus 27 in his 29 minutes tonight. That was his third best plus minus of the season, and definitely the best against a good team, because his two best are against Atlanta and Brooklyn. And one of those was the Atlanta game where the Lakers just had one of their best offensive performances of the season. But this to me was arguably Marcus's best game of the season. And I say that with the acknowledgement that he went 1 for 10 and 0 for 5 on threes. And a big part of why New York was able to go on some runs was just ignore Marcus Smart, let him shoot. But defensively, just the things he was doing, like, again, I think it was reflected in the plus minus and just how impactful he was on that end, guarding a multitude of Knicks players. But I think about took a couple charges. He blows like a play that I'm glad JJ highlighted after the game was there's that 2-on-1 late in the third quarter. And like LA's up, I think 18 at this point. The game's looking like, anything can happen in a 48-minute game, but like the game is decidedly looking like it's going in LA's favor. They've broken the game open. They're about to go, win this by 20, and they have taken their foot off the gas plenty of times in this exact scenario. And there's a 2-on-1, and Marcus forces a turnover right before the end of the third. And that just gives LA a little bit of life, a little bit of momentum. But you go into the fourth quarter, he has that huge play where there's a loose ball, there's a bit of a scrum, and he throws the ball off Jalen Brunson out of bounds, Lakers ball. And it's just little things like that don't necessarily, like, there's no threw the ball off of opposing player on the box score, but like those little plays and moments add up and also give the team a certain edge, which I think this group has desperately needed. I've compared Marcus Smart to the spiritual successor of Dorian Finney-Smith. He grabbed the torch from Dorian, and he has done a lot with it this season. And I don't think it's a coincidence that last season, Dorian Finney-Smith, plus minus monster, net rating monster, changed the Lakers after he was acquired. This season, Marcus Smart, plus minus monster, net rating monster, one of only 2 players on the roster that the Lakers are better with on the floor on both sides of the ball, Marcus and Austin. Only 2 players on the team that LA is better offensively and better defensively when they're on the floor. To me, there's no coincidence with that. It's just all the little things that Marcus does. And even when he has an objectively awful offensive performance, he more than makes up for that with his defense and his overall contribution. So I know like Luka and Austin combined for 60. They made big shots. They made some incredible shots. They also made some big defensive plays themselves, like DeAndre Ayton bounced back. Rui had some big plays. Like you could go down the list. As I said earlier, I think everybody did their job. To me, though, Marcus was instrumental in this win. And like it continues this trend for me where I don't worry about Marcus. Even if he misses a couple shots at the end of the Denver game, he's going to miss shots. Like that's just part of the Marcus Smart experience. But Marcus is a big game player. He is one of the to me, he's the non-star I'm most confident in of like, get him in a 7-game playoff series. He is going to show up. He's going to deliver. He's not going to be perfect. He's going to take bad pull-up threes in transition. He's going to call his own number and try to, play mismatch bully ball. He's going to turn the ball over, but he's going to be a net positive overall. And he's going to contribute he's going to put more on the table than he takes off. And I just think the Lakers haven't had enough of that consistently from their role players, but Marcus Smart is one of those guys. And then takeaway number 3, West standings watch. So big one going on right now in terms of, I guess it's basically over. San Antonio's up 20 on Houston, 19 now, which is of note for the Lakers because if that result holds, then Houston will actually drop to the 4 seed and Minnesota will jump up to the 3 seed. So as I mentioned earlier, right now, LA is slotted at the 5, opposite number 4 Minnesota, but this would actually be number 4 Houston. So I personally like the Houston matchup better than Minnesota for LA. We will have a clear answer by mid-March because LA plays Minnesota on Tuesday and then they play Houston twice in Houston on, I believe, the 16th and 18th. So just a quick update on that. And again, LA and Denver are tied, but LA has the tiebreaker currently. All right. With all that said, let's get into the Q&A. First one from the Enigma 2004. not a super chat, but a new member. Shout out to the Enigma. I appreciate you becoming a member. Means a lot. Thank you. And welcome to the Late Night Gang. An NBA enjoyer, thank you for the super chat. We beat a good team. Keep that same intensity. Also, DA wasn't perfect, but he followed up Marcus's comments with some monster rebounds and defensive plays. Yes, I thought so. Yeah, agreed with the beating the good team and same intensity. And yeah, I thought like the rebounding with DA, there was certainly like multiple efforts, and you know JJ highlighted this after the game where like there were a couple of those rebounds. Like he was not really in the initial fray. He was not in the initial action with the board, and he came skying in and you know making his impact felt. And then defensively switching on to like I thought one of the things I've been critical of him with has been his drop coverage and playing too low in drop and letting guys walk into open shots and you get comfortable. And I thought, you know, Brunson hit a couple shots on him, but I thought he made his presence felt more in that and was picking up a little bit higher in the drop. And I think proactively switching and, you know, forcing them at times to reset or try to attack in a different way. So yeah, just some big rebounds and defensive plays from Marcus. I just read your comment from DA. Connor Phillips, thank you for the super chat. More of these W's and the season's narrative changes. Yeah, and it does, because I think like there is a what have you done for me lately element to some of this, and it's something that I've thought about more as my NBA coverage has just grown through the years, and in terms of like, if you go back, and I think last year was a great example, but if you go back to even like January 1st, let's just pick an arbitrary date. You know, it's a clean like turn of the new year. Look at the best teams in both conferences and sort of the general like best record and best net rating, and it kind of played out that way. Like I think off the top of my head, I think the 4 conference finalists were all in like the top 6, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of Boston, Indiana, OKC, and Minnesota. And so I actually value as the season, I don't want to say like you throw away the first 20, 30 games because that sets a certain tone and foundation for your team. But I do weigh January to April more than I weigh like October to December. So the upside of that, like for the Lakers, I mean, they've just not been the same team that they were earlier in the season with the 15-4 start. But I think the upside is like you have more of a palate cleanse here, where if the Lakers beat Minnesota and Denver next week, all of a sudden that 5-12 record against 600 plus teams is now 7-12. And like, you don't necessarily throw it out the window and just say all of a sudden like they're favorites or you know, they're all of a sudden like on the same level as like OKC and San Antonio. But it is proof of concept that like this team can beat those teams and that they are playing better basketball, that they are trending in the right direction with those matchups. At the same time, the flip side is like if they lose to both those teams, they're going to be 5-14 against that caliber of opponent. And it's going to be more of the same narrative of people just not thinking they could beat good teams. And like, honestly, at that point, we would at least have a bit of a sample size of like, they've almost played 20 games against that type of opponent and they've won 5 of them. So I totally agree with you. I think if the Lakers continue to trend in the right direction here with like, I also just want, even if they're gonna lose some of these games, I don't think they're gonna go undefeated against Minnesota, Denver, Houston twice, OKC twice, Cleveland, and Detroit. If they go undefeated over that stretch, we're having a different conversation, and you know, things are scary for the rest of the league. Realistically, though, they're going to lose some of those games. They're probably going to lose at least half those games. But like, can they make those games competitive? Because the other thing here with the 5-12 record is it's not just a 5-12 record. It's 10 of those 12 games have been by double figures and like basically all been blowouts. I wouldn't. Sometimes you got like the fake double figure game where it's like a close game and then free throws you extend it to 10 or whatever and like it's a double digit win. No, like the Lakers got their asses kicked in basically all of those losses. So there's an element here of like, at least with the 2 losses they have had recently that were single digits, OKC and Denver, those legitimately went down to the last couple of minutes, and LA had a chance to win both games and they didn't. And like ultimately losing a close game, like it only takes you so far, but it was progress because those games early in the season, I mean, we saw what they went to OKC. That game was over in the first quarter. Like it legitimately, they were done and could not handle OKC. So like progress, but they got to keep it going, to your point. Fadil, I hope saying that okay. Thank you for the super chat. I think the Lakers should go after Watson and Herb this summer and build a great bench. Starters should be Luka, Reeves, Herb, Watson, Gafford. Bench, Ivy, Hachimura, Smart, PJ Washington, LaRavia, Hayes, Kennard, Najee, Marshall. I agree in terms of I love Peyton Watson and Herb Jones. So in terms of your hypothetical here, I think it's going to be tough for them to land. I don't think this would work financially in terms of if you're trading. So Herb is still on a team-friendly deal for one more year. Then his extension kicks in. I think he's making around 14 or so million, if I'm not mistaken. I just recently looked it up. Then Watson, I think, is going to be getting 25 plus million. I don't see a world in which he's making less than that. But then between Gafford, Washington, and Najee Marshall, the only way to get all 3 of those guys is to trade with Dallas. And that's a lot of salary to trade. So if you're acquiring Herb into space and also signing Watson, that's going to eat into more than half your cap space. And you're not going to have the flexibility to take on Gafford, Washington, and Marshall, in addition to also signing Jaden Ivey. So I think that the limiting factor here is like, I would prioritize Herb and Watson over everybody else. But if you get Herb and Watson, I think you're unable to sign Jaden Ivey, and it's tough to acquire Gafford. I mean, it's impossible to acquire Gafford, Washington, and Marshall because, I mean, that would require LA sending out, like Dallas is not going to take back Vando, and you have LaRavia here, so he wouldn't be in the trade. But like the Lakers just don't have the finances to do this. Like this team, I think, would be a second apron team if the maths appropriately. So I agree with the premise, though, of if you can get Watson and Herb and improve the bench, like that to me is a successful offseason. I also think they got to nail the center position. You have them getting Gafford here again. I think that's going to be tough to pull off. But if you could, I mean, to me, if you got Watson, Herb, and a like legit long-term starting center, that to me is a home run offseason. I'm skeptical they could get all 3 of those guys, but if they got 2 of the 3, it's at least a triple and a really successful offseason. Agnes, thank you for the super chat. LeBron James' fit on this team feels awfully similar to one we traded for Russ. Too many mouths to feed. Rui is a better fit alongside Luka, in my opinion. I'm going to push back here in terms of I think comparing LeBron to Russ is a bit extreme. I think the version of LeBron we've seen this season is objectively a better player than Russ ever was for the Lakers. I think the Russ thing, it didn't fit, didn't really like. I think I would also say I think LeBron has adapted his game more this season than Russ ever did in LA. I mean, the Russ thing ultimately was like LeBron and AD need shooting around them, so they added a ball dominant player who was one of the worst star shooters in the league. Just never made sense from inception, but they decided, or conception, whichever term you want to use. It just never made sense. And now to your point, like it's like if we just call a spade, it is not the cleanest fit among a big 3, 3 best players on a team who average 20 plus, because I know some people don't like the big 3 moniker. But like if you compare it to, I think the ultimate version of a big three offensively is Steph, KD, and Clay, because all three of those guys could play on and off the ball and were snipers. So it was like you could run, all three of those guys could come off a pin down and cash the jumper, take a step back, cash the three, drive. They could all spot up and be catch and shoot guys. They could all initiate in pick and rolls, more so Steph and KD than Clay. But like Clay, I mean, Clay dropped 62 with like 10 dribbles, right? So just a certain caliber of shooting that if you have that, then, I mean, it doesn't matter who's out there, but like that's like the perfect like offensive trio. Another example that I actually think is like closer to the Lakers, but it just worked better in Brooklyn, was KD, Harden, and Kyrie. That I think that was similar in the sense of like all three guys are best with the ball in their hands, more so than even like Clay was more of has always been more of an off-ball player in Golden State, you know, with and without KD, whereas the big three in Brooklyn, like all those guys have been, especially in their primes, like primary on-ball guys. KD could operate off the ball more naturally than I would say like Luka, LeBron, and Austin. But that was also an element of like more playmaking there with like Kyrie and Harden and some of the overlap compared to what they had in Golden State. But this one to me is somewhere between Brooklyn and then Phoenix with KD, Booker, and Beal. I think like Beal was just at a different place in his career. I think LeBron is better than Bradley Beal last year and just, that fit in Phoenix. But I agree with the premise that there's too many mouths to feed, and I agree with the premise that Rui's a better fit alongside Luka because Rui's a catch and shoot spot up guy, and Luka needs a rim running lob threat big and a bunch of floor spacers and a sidekick. And he's got the rim running bigs in, I would say more so Jackson, but Jackson to a lesser extent DA. He's got the shooting in Luke and Rui and occasionally Marcus. And, occasionally like LeBron's been shooting the ball better, but not in the totality of the season. And then he's got the sidekick in Austin in these games, but without LeBron. So I don't disagree with like the entire premise of your point here. I just think Russ to me was an actively harmful player that I just don't think he wanted to play his style of basketball. He did not want to adjust, and it just was like a very awkward. This is also different because like Russ was coming into a situation where there was an established culture and there was established success. This was a team that just won the championship 2 years ago. In theory, Russ not being a champion would come in and be like, all right, well, LeBron and AD are the top two guys here. I'm going to adapt around them and fit around them and like make this work, because if I do that, we can compete and win a championship. This is an interesting situation because LeBron's been here for a while, obviously, right? And LeBron was the face. LeBron was the guy, and then Luka comes in and it completely flips that, and now Luka's obviously the face. He's the guy, and like LeBron has almost had like the rug pulled out from under him, swapped in a new rug, a new shiny rug, or whatever, and new pattern, and he's having to adapt to that, right? So I think there's like some nuances, some context within this, but I don't disagree with the latter 2 points. I think there are too many mouths to feed. That's why 2 out of the 3 is better. And Rui is an elite shooter. So Rui fits really well next to Luka. But yeah, I think the Russ you guys know how I feel about that. Connor Phillips, thank you for the super chat. Big 3 net issue is a lot on Ayton, most minutes with him. I'm glad you mentioned this. I didn't mention this in the big 3 part because I was keeping it specifically to the big 3, but you actually look at the big 3 with Ayton versus the big 3 with Jackson, there is a big difference there in terms of net. And actually, if you just look at the big 3 on without Ayton, so regardless of if it's Jackson, if it's Maxey, if it's small ball, whatever it is, there's a big gap there as well. So that's been part of the reason why I have been advocating for Jackson to start and for LA to change the start, because they're not changing the big 3 from the starting group, but you could swap in a new center there. that's been part of my rationale with that. But that's a good point because I think those three together, like in some ways bring out I think they kind of bring out the worst in each other defensively. And there can be just a lack of motor and caring and like just, and then you add in DeAndre and then it just, that like supercharges that into it does. I've kind of made this point. It doesn't matter like who you put as the fifth guy there. There's going to be a limitation to that group that just at this point in the season, it has not worked. So I think that's an important piece of context here. Jordan Jones, thank you for the super chat. If you could pick any role player from LeBron's career to add to this team, who would you add? Love the show, Jovan. I like the Y spelling there. That's phonetically how you say my name. Any LeBron role player. Oof. Okay. I'm trying to think through. I'm probably skipping the first Cleveland shift. And then now I'm thinking through Miami, Cleveland. Let me know in the chat which. So Connor Phillips says Caruso. I mean, I was thinking more Miami and Cleveland, like prime LeBron years, but you could make a case for Caruso, KCP, Dwight, Danny Green. But I think it's, chat saying Caruso, and I think I agree here. I was trying to, so let's just, for argument's sake, pick one player from each era. I think that the Heatles era, I would go with, I think Shane Battier would be huge, and he was a big part of their small ball success. Birdman, I think would also be great because I think he'd be an awesome lob threat with Luka and would provide an element of athleticism and toughness. But I think Shane Battier would be huge. I mean, Ray Allen, like I guess you could make the case for as well. I think Shane did a lot of the dirty work and is close to what I would like earlier Shane, because he started to age during the big three era. But like, first year of Shane Battier, especially, I think that player is like close to what you would want in some of the small ball looks, and just like there's an element of the shooting plus the multi-positional defense. Like with Ray Allen, I think that version of Ray is probably still better. Not even probably, like he's better than Luke, but like it's still kind of a similar thing where you're not really adding like defensively. Like I think he's a better, like that version of Ray was a better defender than Luke, but you're still adding a 6'5" perimeter guy that's like not a stopper into the big three, like central lineup. So I would want more of a defensive piece there. Then Cleveland, I think I saw some people mention Shump. I really like Shump. Tristan Thompson was big for the Cavs. I mean, JR, pre-2018 JR, if you could guarantee that. There's a lot of good. I would say for Lakers, I would probably go Caruso. For Cleveland, I might go Shump. And then Miami, I think I'd lean Battier, but it's probably close between Battier and Ray Allen with a nod to Chris Anderson. I was always a big Chris Anderson guy after the like 13 missed dunks in the dunk contest. That was a fun one, Jordan. Jay Spares, thank you for the super chat. Hard to read team. AR got the same number of shots as he does with LeBron in. He just actually made them today. Lack of time together aside, what basketball reason for bad big three plus minus bad defense? What's hilarious, so I did a Sirius XM radio today. I did a hit for them, and they asked me this exact thing, like, why have the big three been bad together? And I was like, it's funny because if you go by the eye test, you just say like, it's simple. Those three can't defend together, and like they're just collectively a clear negative as a trio defensively. But when you actually look at the lineup data, they've been a good defense with the big three on the floor. It's been the offense that's been terrible with the big three on the floor, like bottom three offense in the NBA. So it's actually been the offensive side, that's been a struggle. And that's where like the clunky fit and just those three not quite working together and fitting together yet has been more of an issue. So it's counterintuitive. And again, like I almost like don't believe it because I feel like we have seen also more recently, the offense has been better with the three, but it feels counterintuitive because on paper, when you think about the limitation with the big three, like of course there's an element of like, how do they fit together offensively? Guys got to play off the ball, guys got to sacrifice, etc. But you would think it's just like your floor is so low defensively that the other two guys have to be absolutely awesome on defense to make up for it. But that's not been the case. It's actually been the offensive end where it's just been, I think like they're not getting to the rim as much. They're not getting to the free throw line as much. The turnover rate has been high. So all those things combined for them combined to make them not as good. But again, it's been trending in the right direction post All-Star break. Now, part of that has been some of the competition and we have to factor that in. But as I also mentioned a little bit earlier, like the numbers with Ayton versus the numbers with Hayes have been much different. So might also kind of like, it wasn't good with Rui with the big three. And it has also not been good with DeAndre Ayton with the big three. So that's something that they got to figure out. Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel, thank you for the super chat. This is an interesting take, and I was wondering how many people would have this take, and I get it to a degree, but he says, no big three, then no statement win, hashtag not the real system. I think two things can be true. As you guys know, I like to say on Lakers Collective, I think to me, a statement win is a statement win. It doesn't matter who's in, who's out. Like if they only won with Luka tonight, or they only won with Austin against a fully healthy New York team, I'm not going to detract from that win and be like, well, LeBron and Luka were out, or LeBron and Austin were out. Like, I think a statement win is a statement win. And the Lakers have not had many of these throughout the course of the season. So this team showing some life at this point where it's crazy. We're about a month out from the end of the regular season. Like, I believe the regular season ends April 10th. So we're March 8th. Like, we're not that far out from the end of the regular season. So for LA to start showing some signs of life and some progress at this point, I think is notable. And this was a big game for New York. New York is now only one game up in the loss column ahead of Cleveland for the 3-4 battle. So they still are within striking distance of the 2 seed, and Boston's playing better now that Tatum's back, and they look scary. But like New York has stuff to play for. New York's trying to be the 2 seed, trying to avoid being the 4 seed, and this was a big game for them, and they lost it. I think this is a statement win, regardless of who is playing or whatnot. Like the context is they played a really good team at full strength. Like the other team was at full strength and they beat them. So that's a statement win for me. Now, to your point, there is something of, with the context that we know they've looked better with 2 of the big 3, and especially with Luka and Austin, they have won at a 818 winning percentage, 67 win pace, have the monster net rating with those 2 on the floor without LeBron. Like, yes, there are some things here that are not necessarily replicable into like the broader context of the big 3 playing together. And that's why I said that at the top. Like, the next step here is doing this more of just like beating the elite teams down the stretch, but then also figuring out how can we do this with the big 3 together, because that's like the final thing here. Because again, if you look at, let's actually look at the 5 wins quickly individually. Tonight or today, no big 3. San Antonio, no big 3. Denver, no big 3. Minnesota, no big 3. And other Minnesota game, no big 3. So they've actually not beaten any of the, like, all 5 of these wins have come without the big 3. And maybe an hour 15 into the pod, maybe I should have led with that. But like that's the final thing, is like, can they do this with the big 3 together? I think that's a fair question to pose. I don't want it to take away from the progress they showed today and just like how big of a win this was for them. Rui said it after the game. He said like they took today personally, and like the team is aware of I don't even want to call it a narrative because sometimes narratives can be not true. This, I guess, is a narrative that was true of like, they just have not beaten a bunch of good teams. And like they've heard the noise, they've heard the criticism, that they've heard people saying, we don't believe you can do this until you show us. And like they went out and showed it. So I don't want to take that away, but I also agree that if LeBron comes back and they lose Tuesday, they lose against Denver, and they go like 1-5 over their remaining games against like these types of teams, at that point, it's more so like they just can't do it for a number of reasons with the big three, and they just can't like beat these teams with them. And then becomes ultimately like an off-season conversation about what's the best way to build this roster. Jay Spares, thank you for the super chat. Also, thank you for being a member for 3 months. Side note, unhinged Jovan on Russ was hysterical. Yeah, it didn't carry the same weight because my mic was, thankfully my mic is working. For those who are on Discord, you saw I just restarted my mic and it immediately worked after the stream. So next time that happens, we'll do that. But I had an unhinged Russ take on his media stuff and shared some behind the scenes of my experience with him. So if you guys did not check that out on the last show, make sure you check it out. Harry Chinani, thank you for the super chat. 16 threes for Luka, way too many, only 4 assists, 148 minutes played in the last 4, played 32 minutes against Indiana in 3 quarters. 148 in the last 4 is what? 37. Yeah, pretty high. And that's with, to your point, only 32 against Minnesota. JJ's been going for it. JJ's been wanting to win these. I said it during the Luka part of notable performers. I think 16 is pretty high to be making only 5. You could, I know we've had the discussion now a couple times about like 24 as the number that was maybe like too high in terms of field goal attempts for him. I get it. I think with no LeBron, with no one else real, like the Lakers had 4 guys in double figures tonight, and you could make the devil's advocate argument that, okay, they're not Austin and Luka only had 9 combined assists. They're looking to score. They're not involving their teammates, but I mean, Marcus went 1 for 10. Jackson went 0 for 3. Jake and Vando and Maxey combined to take 4 shots. Luke went 4 for 8, but that's also a guy who's going to be defended with a certain level of gravity. So I think the Lakers, like the Knicks, are top 10 on both sides of the ball. Like the Lakers needed an element of like shot creation that I think they ultimately got from Luka and Austin. But yeah, I mean, I think the bigger thing for me, honestly, with Luka, I think the threes bother me more than the shot attempts. I've made this point before because I know people will be on field goal attempt watch and like, is 22 too high? Is 24 too high? Is 27 too high? For me, it's more so the threes when he's not making them at a high enough rate. Because I think the thing that gets lost in this is like he went 6 for 9 inside the arc. So like with how great of a finisher and mid-range shooter he is, like I want Luka taking as many of those as possible within reason, right? But I think you could certainly have swapped 2 to 4 of the threes for like mid-range jumpers or shots inside the arc. And I think with how he was hitting those tonight, it would have evened out or been a even out from like a shot probability or point per possession standpoint, but just resulted in a more efficient night for him. But yeah, I mean, if you want to nitpick, that's like the one thing you can nitpick. I'm not going to hold it too much against him. I think again, it probably 2 or 3 of those he could have just trimmed out. Like again, I made the point, like, I mean, 16 threes is a lot to attempt for anybody. And if you're making 7, 8 of them, that's one thing. If you're making 5, it's just, I don't know. But I thought Luka, the defense tonight, the rebounding, the big shots down the stretch, I thought he made some really big plays. And, there's certainly area, like you could also look at 6 turnovers. Like there are areas he could be better in, but I thought a lot of people were off tonight on the LA side from just like, I don't think anyone played from an efficiency standpoint. Like there was a lot that could have been better. They shot 43% overall. Agnes again, thank you for the super chat. AR, Luka, Smart, Rui, Ayton plus 23 net in 70 minutes. So the pushback, the quick pushback to this would just be the 70 minutes, but like the Lakers just don't have a big sample size with a lot of their groups. So you almost have to sometimes look at like more the 2 and 3 man lineup data to extrapolate stuff out versus the 5 man lineup data. Like that group could, JJ likes the 250 minute mark, like that they could play 250 minutes and be like a negative somehow. Now, I don't think that would happen. And look, this is the group that started the season together, and the Lakers had a great start to the season. That this has been the primary starting group during that 9-2 stretch. So there's been some proven success there, but I think we have, like, I continue to say this when talking about the big three and the starting group and stuff. And I've said this going back to the summer, like we have to operate in reality. The big three are going to start. They like people can say Austin is Ginobili and should come off the bench. And people can look at LeBron and say, look at the record, look at the net rating, look at this and that. They're starting. So we have to base this in reality. We cannot say like, we can debate what should happen, but like I'm telling you what's going to happen. They are going to start. So I think the more constructive perspective, in my opinion, is like, okay, if they're starting, who are the best 2 players to start next to them? What's the best way to distribute the minutes and the rotation? What are the best bench lineups to put with them? And like figuring that out, because we could argue till we're all blue in the face of who should start, who shouldn't with the big three. Would it make more sense to stagger Austin because he's more on the ball compared to he looks better on the ball at times, right? As a primary guy compared to playing off the ball. But then LeBron has a certain usage, and like we could just keep going down the different arguments, but it's not happening. So I think this lineup, to your point, like can play more, and 4 of these 5 guys are starters. So this is an argument for maybe Rui just comes in a little bit earlier for LeBron. You get this group for a few minutes. They continue to play well. And then you go to like the next iteration of the rotation. But this is not going to be the starting lineup. Unless LeBron is injured, this is not going to be the starting lineup. Fed Heel, thank you for the super chat. So I didn't pay attention to the financial thing. So how about Luka, Reeves, Washington, Watson, Gafford, Ivy, Smart, Hayes, Rui, Marshall, Ayton, Kleba, Kennard, Bufkin, Bronny. We could quickly do some math here. And let me just. So I would say part of this depends also on how much Austin's making, because that. They can go over the first apron, go over the cap with Austin and his bird rights and stuff. But obviously, if you're adding a bunch of money, like you want to be careful how far you're going. But quickly, if we're operating under the, let's just even say like $60 million cap space as like a more optimistic. So PJ Washington next year is making 19.8. Then you have Watson again. Let's just benchmark him at 25. Gafford, I forget if his extension kicks in next year or not. Gafford's extension does kick in next year, so he's at 17. So right with the 3 starters, you're at, let's just say, you're almost at. I mean, you're around 60 million. So. Yeah, I don't think you're getting. You're not getting Ivy, and you're not getting Marshall. You're not getting Watson, Gafford. I mean, not Watson. Washington, Gafford, and Marshall from Dallas. I just don't see Dallas giving up all 3 of those guys. And then if they somehow did, that would pretty much be all your cap space, and you're not getting Ivy. And keeping Rui, and keeping Kennard, and Kleba, I guess, could be a minimum guy. So I would say among the additions slash like re-signings here, it's hard to do the Dallas guys plus Watson. You would have to do one of the Dallas guys, and I think it would be, Washington or Gafford plus Watson. And then you're not getting the other two Dallas guys. And then I think Ivy's going to get not like a lot of money, but he is a former lottery pick. I think Chicago traded for him in part to keep him. So I think he's probably just staying put in Chicago. And then, Rui's making, part of the cap space argument again is I've talked about, like, part of it is rescinding LeBron's rights. Part of it's also rescinding Rui's rights. And then if you rescind Rui's rights, you can only keep him if you use cap space on him. But if you're acquiring players with cap space and or signing guys with cap space, you don't have it. So I guess to be as concise as possible, you'd probably have to cut like 3 to 4 players here. So it would be a much different roster. I think if you went with this starting, let's just say for hypothetical sake, you go with this starting group. That's the starting group you want to build out. Your bench is probably, I forgot about Smart too. Yeah, your bench is probably like, maybe you could use the exception on Smart and Hayes combined or whatever. Let's just say optimistically, you're probably Smart, Hayes, Ayton, Kleba on a minimum, Bufkin and Bronny. Like that's your team. No Kennard, no Marshall, no Rui, no IV. So yeah, I think you'd have to cut out multiple guys from the rotation here. Jordan Jones, thank you for the super chat. As a Wizards LeBron fan, that's a very interesting combination. I'm not able to catch a lot of these live, but what other player in NBA history would you pair with LeBron to build a championship team that he hasn't played with besides MJ? LOL. I think that the beauty with LeBron is there's so many guys you could pair him with. I think of Steph and what we saw from those two at the 2024 Olympics, and LeBron basically playing the supercharged Draymond role of 2-man game with Steph and LeBron, and LeBron can roll, play make out of the short roll. He could drive out of that. He could also pick and pop. And then you have, of course, the threat of Steph and just how much panic he causes in a defense. So I think of Steph. I almost think about like the different archetypes you could put him with. So you could put him with Steph, who's almost his own archetype, right? But like that shooting point guard, I guess there's some overlap with Kyrie, but they're obviously different players. Then I also think about like you could go like a Kawhi or a KD, and with Kawhi, it's almost that's your. He became more than a Scottie Pippen type, right? But it's almost like pairing like LeBron and Kawhi is kind of its own like Jordan and Pippen in a way. But again, Kawhi evolved beyond the Pippen archetype. And then, KD and LeBron, like I think LeBron being more of the on-ball guy, KD operating off of pin downs, off-ball actions, and LeBron setting him up. I think there's a natural pairing there. And then you think about the big man spot. There's LeBron and Tim Duncan would have been awesome. LeBron and prime Shaq. He technically played with Shaq in Cleveland, but LeBron in an elite big, because he's, outside of AD, the bigs he's played with, like in their prime, have been more of the jump shooting types, and part of that's been Kevin Love and Chris Bosh had to adapt their games a lot to fit around, like as the third cog in a big three. They had to become more, stretch bigs, spacing bigs. But I think like seeing him with like a Duncan or a Shaq, a Kareem, if you want to go more old school. I think one of the beautiful things with LeBron and especially prime LeBron is like he just was the ultimate Swiss Army knife. There was basically no weakness he had. I would say that especially once he like reached mid 2010s, he could do anything on a basketball court, and you could adapt that to any player archetype. So that would be fun. I guess if you're saying no MJ, you could technically put it with Kobe, but I think he could fit with honestly just about anybody. But I think the Steph one would probably be the most fun because LeBron, at his peak could basically just do everything Draymond did in addition to more. And then like that combo, as we've seen how unstoppable the Steph Draymond 2-man game has been. And I think this would be an even higher level of that. Cage Britt, thank you for the super chat. Check Adu's G League stats today. 5 for 5 from 3. Let's see. What is Adu up to? I'm seeing an update here. So this is through 3. He had 23.6 rebounds, 2 blocks, 9 of 11 shooting, 5 for 5 on threes. Was 2 for 7 on threes in his previous 6 G League games coming in. So that's notable because small sample size, of course, but 2 for 7 on threes going into tonight in 6 games. That means he's basically taking a little over a 3. I mean, for all intents and purposes, a 3 a game, and had only made 2 of them. Then goes 5 for 5 tonight. I mean, that balances out to 7 for 12, which is over 50%. He's not a 50% 3-point shooter, but Adu's been playing well in the G League. And I talked about doing a breakdown. Maybe I'll do that, especially coming off of today. I'll do that this week, but I think that would be a fun video to do. Gary Singh, thank you for the super chat. Lakers not better without Braun. Watching this game, AR and Luka took such bad contested shots in second half. One, because role players played hard on defense. I think the shot selection could have been better. That would be one of the things. I mean, I've already kind of touched on that, but for both Luka and Austin, you could make a case that they both took some shots that you'd like to have back. I also think they carried, like I think about, people will. I think Kobe is maybe like the best historical example of this, but it was also a different era, so there's a lot of context with the Kobe stuff. But like with Kobe, there was an element of just sometimes it was a game was in the mud, and like was he taking the best shots always? Like no, but he was still finding ways to score a lot and create advantages for his teams, and it wasn't always the prettiest basketball, but it ended up winning a lot more often than not. And I'm not saying that Austin or Luka is Kobe, but like I'm just more so making the general point of like sometimes you have to win playing a certain style. And but again, I think they both could have done a better job with the passing and playmaking tonight. I also would say they both had some looks for Marcus that Marcus did not cash tonight. And, Marcus goes 4 for 10 or 5 for 10, and the 9 assists that those guys had combined is 12 or 13 assists. And, maybe we're looking at things a little bit differently. But I don't disagree, especially in the fourth quarter. I thought they both settled a bit and could have been better with that. And that's also why I made the argument for I think LeBron could have helped with that in terms of his post-up play and attacking out of the post, his passing. LeBron has been, regardless of whatever struggles we want to focus on with him, the shot, the rebounding, the defense, the turnovers, whichever thing people want to harp on a given game, like the passing has been huge from LeBron. Like LeBron's passing has been a real weapon in LA's offense, I think. But I don't disagree. I wouldn't only chalk it up to the role players playing hard on defense. I also think Austin and Luka played hard on defense and had big defensive plays, but the Lakers definitely won this game on the defensive end and not the offensive end. You will get no pushback from me there. Lakers 702, thank you for the super chat. Thoughts on pursuing Jordan Goodwin in the offseason? I am open to it. I don't think he's a minimum player. I think he's earned himself at least like some sort of exception, not necessarily a full exception, but somewhere in between. Again, I don't think he's like a non-taxpayer MLE, like $15 million a year guy, but if you told me Jordan Goodwin got 5 to 8 million, 6 to 10 million, somewhere in that range next year, I wouldn't be like shocked by that. So, really the only thing holding him back, I think, from being much more coveted is just the size. Like if he was 2 to 3 inches bigger, he's getting like, he's getting the full non-tax payer at that point. But like, I just think it's sort of a size thing where he's in that like 6'3", 6'4" range that he's not a point guard, but then he's also not like a full wing, if that makes sense. I would be open to it. I think, I mean, the Lakers just have relatively limited resources in terms of, as I've laid out now several times, like if you are spending big on the starter, like going after starters and you're trying to get a restricted free agent, you're trying to trade for a couple guys, at some point the cap space runs out and you do have the room, the cap space, I guess that's the room exception. But you also might use that on a Marcus Smart who could opt out. You might use that on Jackson Hayes who's up. And there's also you probably have to rescind the rights for Rui, and like how does Rui fit into all this? So I think there's just a lot of moving parts where my priorities are, especially if LeBron is not back, whether he retires, goes elsewhere, whatever. I think you need a starting 5, 4, and 3 offensively. And that needs to be the priority. How can you use the 50 to 60 million to get those 3 positions? Then it starts to be like, what are the bench pieces around that? But I would approach it from like a bigger picture perspective and try to address the bigger needs and then get into the weeds with the bench. Like, that's not to say the weeds and the bench are not important. They are very important, but LA only has so many resources, only has so much money to spend. So I think the bigger thing is, can you get the PJ Watson? Now I'm mixing up PJ Washington and Peyton Watson. Can you get the Peyton Watson, or can you trade for the PJ Washington, or can you get the Isaiah Hartenstein or Lou Dort or whoever's out there that's potentially available? Can you get those guys? Can you fill in the starting group and then start to focus on the bench? Because I think at this point, I made the point before, like, to me, the Lakers, the big 3 are the only like locked in starters on other good teams. I think several of these other guys like Marcus, Rui, Luke, they'd play on some of these teams, but they'd all be bench players. So even if the Lakers are keeping some of these guys, they should be slotting them more. Like, ideally, if Marcus is on the team next year, he's a bench player. He's not a starter. I think if the Lakers are entering game 1 next season with Marcus as a starter, they've failed to build the right roster. So that's my, like, so I guess I say all that to say, like, I like Jordan Goodwin. I think he'd be a nice fit off the bench depending on the context of the rotation. But, and it's still a mistake that the Lakers let him go. I just, depending on how much money he's going to command and the market and LA's needs, I just have him like a little bit lower on the totem pole of like what LA should be pursuing. Cage Britt, thank you for the super chat. M-Rob audition, Jax / RW3 rotation, or not good enough. Well, it was not the best Mitchell Robinson audition, and the Lakers have an incredible habit of having potential players auditioning for them just have their worst performances, which actually might help the Lakers and drop the price for said players. But 4 points, 4 rebounds, had a couple offensive rebounds and only played 17 minutes. Was Knicks were -11 in his 17 minutes, which was the second worst plus minus on the team. And I was talking to someone who's familiar with the Knicks after the game, and they were just saying he was like completely a non-factor tonight in a way that's unusual. So I like him. He's grown on me over the last couple of weeks. A couple of weeks ago, I was a little bit more skeptical of him. I think in diving more into the numbers, watching some more film on him, I've grown more open to the possibility of Mitchell Robinson. I do think he's more of a platoon center than like a full, like a couple of the options. To me, he's a platoon center. Daniel Gafford is more of a platoon center. I've made this point with Daniel Gafford before. Daniel Gafford almost never plays more than like low to mid 20s on, I mean, he's only played for Washington and Dallas, but like all these years, he's kind of in that low to mid 20s range. He's just not a guy who plays more than like mid 20s. Jackson is in a similar spot, although I think at like a lower level. Robert Williams with some of the health stuff, I think is also. So if you're talking about like a 3-headed monster of Robinson, Jackson, Robert Williams, I'd be open to that depending on the price for each of these guys. Like Mitchell Robinson, ideally, I think is around that like non-taxpayer MLE, maybe a little bit higher, but I'd want to keep it closer to that. Jackson, I would be open to paying over more than the minimum, but ideally not much higher. And then Robert Williams to me is a minimum big at this point with all the injury stuff. But if that's your 3-man trio, I think they complement, like Jackson and Robert Williams have a little bit more overlap, but Robert Williams, he's a better rebounder on both ends. He's a better shot blocker, rim protector, like just a much better defender than Jackson. And then Robinson brings in a certain amount of force and physicality and strength that those two guys don't necessarily have. So I would really like that as a center trio. Again, I think there's a way to potentially pull it off while paying those guys like a combined $25 million for those 3 players. If you could do that, that's awesome. BT Kingsley, thank you for the super chat. If DA signs the contract, how soon can we trade him? So you're talking about DA's player option. So it wouldn't be, just for semantics here or your technicalities, like it wouldn't be signing the contract. It would just be opting in. So he has that option. If he opts in, the Lakers could trade him immediately. So there's no restrictions on that. So the Lakers could trade him the second he exercises that option, or like, once the offseason starts. All right, I'll go 20 more minutes and we'll do a clean 2 hours on it. Connor Phillips says Spurs officially beat the Rockets. Big 2 weeks coming up. Yeah, looking at it. So Spurs, wow, 145. That is Spurs are scared. Like Spurs are, people are going to talk about the lack of experience and like this and that. And I get it because I generally like feel that way, but the Spurs are like so far ahead of schedule that to me, I mean, this kind of reminds me of like when OKC made the leap, not recently. I'm talking about like early 2010s with KD, Russ, and Harden. They didn't make the finals right away, but they actually lost to the Lakers, remember, in a first round series. But that they were at a different stage back then than the Spurs are now. The Spurs are ahead of that team. So yeah, I mean, I think Spurs have a real shot to at least make the conference finals, which if they pull that off, going from like being a projected play-in team to conference finalist, they've supercharged that trajectory. Verbal Karate says second round in West will be versus OKC and versus San Antonio. Nowhere to hide. Tough. Yeah, neither side. I mean, I would still rather play San Antonio than OKC, especially with the lack of experience and just. I think I just was talking up San Antonio, so I'm not going to like walk that back, but I don't think they have the same stylistic versatility that OKC has. Necessarily, like their too big stuff isn't as, I mean, they don't do really the too big stuff. They do always have an awesome rim protector out there, and they can play small, but I think they're a little bit more susceptible to big forwards and front court size outside of Wemby, which is a big aside there. Whereas I think OKC, they're just, if they get healthy, and that's a big if, I guess, at this point, but if they're healthy, they can play 2 centers, they could play 1 center, they could play 0 centers and still be just fine in any match. Like, I think OKC is still probably the most versatile team, to say nothing of just like how dominant they've been overall. Baba says, I see the Spurs as Jazz when they had Donovan and Gobert's second round exit. I think my one thing with the Spurs that I'm going to be interested in is like the I think late game offense in some of these close games, and like they have multiple guys who can attack and create, and it might not like matter, but I just wonder, is that going through Wemby? Is that going through Fox? Is it more matchup based? Is it more system based? Like what's going to be the late game approach in 4 minutes left 4-point game. How's the offense functioning down the stretch? To this point, my primary pushback here is I would argue, especially if you go back to Utah, because I do think Donovan Mitchell has gotten better since the Utah days. I think Wemby right now is better than Mitchell or Gobert ever was in Utah. So I think they kind of had an issue where I don't think Donovan was ever like truly in that top 10 conversation in Utah. And Wemby is in the top 5 conversation. I mean, there's some people who put him as like the 5th best player for sure, or even higher. I have him somewhere between, I have him probably 5th or 6th personally, but I mean, I think Wemby's ceiling is just much higher than the Utah version of Donovan or Gobert. So I think they were a team that like dominated in the regular season, but ultimately got exposed in the playoffs. I think Wemby's special enough where like it's a little bit different than that. BT Kingsley, thank you for the super chat. Need to see this team for the next 4 to 5 games with no LeBron. IJS, I don't know what IJS means. I don't think you're going to see this team for the next 4 games without LeBron. I think LeBron's going to be back on Tuesday, if not Thursday at the latest. But we could see some of these lineups, and I think there's things to take away from tonight positively that they could hopefully apply with LeBron. But LeBron's not coming off the bench. Chuck Dangler, aka Fang Charlie, Subrate and Late Night Gang. I don't like morning games because it starts at 3:30 a.m. China time while I'm in bed, just like the trade deadline. Good W, needed it. Yes, great W tonight. Lakers really needed this. Connor Phillips, I think Wemby's just built for big moments. I'm very excited to see his first playoff run. Yeah, I think so too. And not like, to me, what changed my opinion of San Antonio was when they beat OKC 3 times in a row. Cause it was like, especially that third game, OKC was up for that game. And to my recollection, they basically had everybody. And it was like, OKC was with great teams, championship hangover, sometimes you see the stuff, like they take their foot off the gas. OKC was playing a game that they were treating like a must win, and they still couldn't beat San Antonio. So to walk a team down 3 times in a row, there's just something there where I think they could beat OKC in a series. But it's also a situation where maybe it's like rock, paper, scissors. Someone else could beat San Antonio. Like I think the Denver San Antonio potential second round matchup's really interesting. But I think for me, them being able to like beat OKC that many times in a row and knowing OKC wanted that game and it didn't matter, there's nothing they could do about it. And like the fact of the matter is, like, just having Wemby is a cheat code, because even like you can't even compare Gobert to Wemby, because when Wemby's out there, it's not just like the shots at the rim and the decreased percentage. It's teams just don't shoot at the rim when Wemby's out there. And like you can't really quantify other than just, I guess, comparing like the splits of attempts on, per 36 minutes or 100 possessions, whatever, with Wemby on versus off. And it's like, there's a dramatic decrease of, you basically have to beat the Spurs with your jump shooting when Wemby's on the floor. And that's why I think it's a bad matchup for OKC, because we know OKC is not a good shooting team. And that's like the weakness within their makeup. Denver's a much better shooting team. The Lakers have been a much better shooting team recently. Minnesota's a solid shooting team. Houston's not. So that's where I think San Antonio, and they just blew out Houston tonight, they have the advantage over OKC and Houston because those two teams can't really shoot. Connor Phillips, if he stays healthy, Wemby will be the undisputed best defender of all time, and it won't be close. Yeah, with defender, it's interesting because like we think about longevity and peak and all these things with like offensive stuff and like the GOAT debate and all that stuff. With defender, I feel like you rarely hear someone be like, I mean, sometimes you'll hear someone like, they'll be, okay, defensive player of the year, all defense teams. I think those are like the two things that get brought up, but it's not like this guy was the best defender for 12 straight years. And like, that was his like defensive prime or defensive peak. We don't really talk about it that way, but I mean, Wemby has the upside. I mean, I think I would say like if he can stay healthy into his mid to late 20s, like the mid to late 20s version of Wemby, who's more physically formed, is probably the greatest defender who's ever lived. Now, how his career trajectory will go in terms of health and like whatnot, that's an open-ended question at this point. But yeah, I mean, I think if he can take care of himself, stay healthy, and like bulk up a little bit to not be as thin as slim as he currently is. Yeah, I mean, I think his upside is the like best defensive peak ever, and just I mean physically he's just I don't know what you do. And then Connor follows up with Hakeem is the best defender of all time. Yeah, it's also tough to like compare. I think they were talking about it on Bill Simmons' pod about like, I think Zach and Bill were talking about prime Kawhi versus prime Scottie Pippen defensively, and like that's its own conversation. I think Tim Duncan gets slept on in these defensive conversations, but yeah, I would say Hakeem is probably the best defensive big man of all time. And then I almost look at it in like different archetypes where you have the big man, you have the wing, you have the guard. So like best defensive guard, probably Gary Payton. Best wing, I think it's Kawhi and Scottie Pippen are the two on the short list there. And then Hakeem's probably the best defensive big man of all time. Taman, thank you for the super chat. Luka, AR, Watson, McDaniels, Misi, or swap JD with Murphy. That would be an awesome outcome. I think I'll say this. I think if you were, I don't think you're getting McDaniels or Murphy with just 2 firsts. So I think the Lakers would have to empty the clip. And with both guys, I mean, you could argue that, I mean, McDaniels is he's like I had this, one of my mailbag segments earlier in the year. I talked about, someone asked me about the best Robins. The best Alfreds. And the Alfred is like, you have your Batman, you have your Robin, and then you have your Alfred, who, I think a couple of great examples of Alfreds are Aaron Gordon in Denver and Derek White in Boston. I think those are probably the 2 best Alfreds in the NBA right now, or on the short list. McDaniels is in that conversation where he's like he's not a Robin, but he's also not like a normal Alfred. I think I was calling them like super Alfreds, like put the cape over the tuxedo and like, flex a little bit as Alfred. So McDaniels he's kind of in a weird spot where, again, I legitimately don't think if you offered them 2 firsts, they would do that. I think he's like too good for that. But then if you give 3 firsts, that also feels like a little bit too much. So he's in like a weird, almost worth like 2.25 first, 2.5 first. And that's where you could maybe throw in some different assets. But also if you're Minnesota, like why are you just giving up Jaden McDaniels? If you've invested in this Ant, Randall, McDaniels, Gobert, maybe, you probably run into some sort of hump in the playoffs this year where you lose in the second round, you lose in the conference finals, whatever, probably second round in my opinion. But I don't think, if I'm honestly Minnesota, my keepers are Ant 1, McDaniels 2. I would rather have McDaniels than Gobert. I'd rather have McDaniels than Randall. And I feel pretty strongly about that. Then with Murphy, you can make a case Murphy in 2 years is going to be the best player on the Pelicans. I don't think that's crazy. He might even be the best player on the Pelicans right now. I think like it's close between he and Zion and like what the peak version of Zion currently is. I still think there's like an all-star level player in there. It's just, can he stay healthy and sustain a certain level of play consistently? But I think Murphy could be a special player as well. So I guess point being, I just think to get McDaniels or Murphy, I think people would be shocked at like the actual price. Like I don't think the Pelicans are bluffing when they say they want a Bane return for Murphy. I don't think they're going to get a Bane return for Murphy, but I also think 2 picks is probably on. Or I guess if if the Lakers were to somehow pull that off with 2 picks, I think it would have to be both of the future picks. It's not the 2026 pick. No one's putting that, like, that's not the pick that's getting it done. It's like, we'll give you the 2 future picks and bet against you guys in the early 2030s. That's like the one way that plays out. But even then, probably not enough. The only question here is, like, I like Misi. I don't know if Misi's a starting level center on like a championship contender. Maybe you're going with some platoon thing where we talked about earlier. Can you get Jackson and Robert Williams off the bench? Maybe it's Misi, Jackson, Robert Williams, and you have a rotation, and like you also have some depth there where if one of those guys goes down, like the other 2 can, like, instead of splitting it 3 ways, you could just split it 2 ways and like get away with it that way. But I think I would say up to this point, Misi has not been a starting level player. I think he has the potential to be a starting level player. But for example, like tomorrow, let's just say tomorrow's game 7, I would start Jackson Hayes over Misi, and I would not think twice about it. But I like Misi, to be clear. I like him. Matt, thank you for the super chat. Jovan, does this game change your opinion on Lakers ceiling this year? Beating a good team once is different than beating them in a 7-game series. No, this does not change my opinion on the Lakers ceiling, but I will say this, and we'll talk about this tomorrow on Lakers Collective, and we're approaching the 2-hour mark here, so I will be wrapping in a couple of minutes. But for me, this cracked the door open for me to entertain my opinion on the Lakers ceiling changing. So right now, I think based on all the evidence we have up to this point in the season, my most likely outcome would be a competitive first round loss. I think there's a pathway to winning a first round series, especially if they play Houston, and then losing in round 2. I also think there's an increased probability that they're probably going to be in the 4 or 5. So I know some people are holding on to like the end of the regular season last year against OKC. I am not. I think just the style of play and the teams are much different, and it's different pre-championship OKC versus post-championship OKC. So I would pick OKC over them. Like there's no real like debate for me on that. So honestly, what's funny is my season prediction, it's different now because Minnesota just jumped up to 3. My season prediction going into the season was the Lakers were going to be in the 4-5, play Minnesota, beat Minnesota in a rematch, and then lose to OKC in round 2. And that might end up happening. But in terms of changing the ceiling of like, can the Lakers win a second round series and beat an OKC or San Antonio? I need to see multiple statement wins. I also need to see them, to Gary's point, I think it was Gary earlier who brought up, no, it wasn't Gary, no, it was Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! Was the one who said it's not a statement win because they didn't do it with the big 3. To that point, they've yet to have a statement win with the big 3. So I would like to see them at least have a couple of those statement wins with the big 3 to show me that they can do that and not just operate under blind faith that like they'll somehow figure it out in the playoffs. Because I agree with you. Beating a team once is different than beating them 4 times. And the Lakers have yet to, again, kind of looking at the last 3 months, the Lakers have not been a consistent team, and they will put together these stretches of 3 nice wins or 3 blowout wins or whatever, and then immediately drop the rope. And can they sustain some consistency down the stretch here, beat some of these teams, and do so with all 3 of the big 3? If they can't win with the big 3, then none of this matters, because unless one of them gets injured, they're going to have the big 3 in the playoffs. They're going to play 20 plus minutes a night. And if they're losing those minutes, they're almost certainly going to lose any series they're in if they can't win with the big 3. So that's something. And they don't play San Antonio again, but they do play OKC twice. So those matchups, I'll be I'm weighing more Minnesota, Denver, Houston twice, and OKC even more so than New York, Cleveland, Detroit. Like, those are still nice measuring stick games and big games, but the West ones matter more because those are the teams they're jockeying for with positioning, and those are the teams they're going to play in round one. So hope that answered that. Salamander notes that Michael Jordan came off the bench. My broader point was like Michael Jordan was never really okay, so you ought to go back to he came off the bench a little bit during his Wizards tenure, and he came off the bench a little bit his second season when he broke his foot. But like, if we're being honest, I mean, he played at 1,072 regular season games. He started 1,039. He came off the bench for 33 games across his 15-year career, and only came off the bench in 3 seasons. So, I mean, if you want to push back on that, but like he was never a consistent bench player. Because even like 86, before he really became Michael Jordan, although he was already on his way to becoming Michael Jordan, started 11 of the 18, and then his final 2 years in Washington started 53 of 60, 67 of 82. So you could technically say Michael Jordan came off the bench, but he never came off the bench in like a serious way. All right. Any final questions before we wrap here? Let me just double check. I did not miss any super chats. All right. I'm going to wrap here then. I appreciate you all for rocking with me for the past couple of hours. Great win today for the Lakers. I consider it a statement win. I also consider it the best win of the season. They are now 5th in the West and 5-12 against teams with a 600 win percentage or better. But shout out to the chat. Shout out to the late night gang. Again, now we're getting into the evening portion of the day. But I'll be back tomorrow at 11 a.m. Pacific time on Lakers Collective. I will then be back Tuesday night after Lakers Wolves. That is a big one. Also going to be looking to do a live at some point during the week, potentially a mailbag at some point, and then also want to find some time to dig into some a do film and do something on that. Keon Park, thank you for the super sticker. I appreciate it. Shout out to the chat. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. If you've made it this far and have not yet subscribed, what are you doing? Just hit that subscribe button. And for those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back tomorrow. I will talk to you all then.